first thing is, Elain Szu, for the entirety of our planning of doing the Beloved Tech Brands Conference, was the VP of Marketing at Sentry. And those were all the materials. We're like, this VP of Marketing at Sentry, we are going to talk about how Sentry does developer marketing. By the way, Sentry does developer marketing very well, like creme de la creme, and we were going to have a lot of talking points about that. But you know what? She decided to take a different job. Congratulations on your new job. Elain just joined as the SVP of marketing at Aurora Solar. So instead, what we're going to do is we're going to talk about SVP, VP, CMO, executive level marketing. That is a non-trivial change to a marketer's career, to like level up into a whole different playing field, the big leagues, so to speak. And to join her is Carilu Dietrich, who was an early marketer at Atlassian and stayed there for how many years? 8? 4 years. All the way through the IPO, which is an incredible milestone for a marketer because so much changes from when you're private to when you're public. And ever since then, Carilu has been advising like 20 different companies. You've seen all of them. You know what they all are. From MongoDB to Segment to Twilio to, oh my gosh, Miro to all the tech companies that you've heard of and can name. She's probably advising either the CMO or the CEO. So what is she advising them of? This is what we're going to talk about. Please come on up. Okay, so first of all, also welcome to the stage the youngest member of our audience here. Shall we start with that? Shall we start with the most sensitive question that maybe some of you have wondered? What is it like to make a major change in your career and interview while you're about to shake some shit up in your life? What is that like?
What do you mean? I just had a burger for lunch. It's a good question. I actually told my yesterday, I'm like, we should talk about this because I didn't have the answer. And everyone has kind of a different approach to how you handle, planning for it or not. So I am expecting. She's not just being mean. It was, I think when I decided to start looking for roles, I was not expecting. And that changed pretty quickly. And, the process is a long one. It doesn't happen overnight. You have lots and lots and lots of conversations. Obviously, exec recruiting is its own topic that we could probably talk about. I bet Carilu has some really good thoughts on this. And it's something that I think for me, I didn't really have a good meter for the right way to approach it. So I just approached it the way I wanted to, which was basically like I talked to one of my exec recruiters and a few of the other talent partners that I've been speaking with, and I sort of just told them up front. I was like, look, I'm expecting, by the way, I don't know if that plays a role in any of the roles that you think that I should be talking to, but if it's a problem for them, it's probably not the right company. And, that's a tough thing to kind of admit, I think, when you spend the most of your career being selfish and basically only indexing on, like, growth and what you want. So I didn't share. I didn't feel like it was necessary. I think most of the conversations are remote these days, and that you can handle that conversation when and if appropriate. When I did do executive on-sites or final presentations and things like that, I also didn't hide it. But honestly, I wasn't quite as big as I am now, so it was a little bit less obvious. It could have just been I ate a burger for lunch. I think everyone kind of handles it your own way, and I do think that the team, to Aurora's credit, part of the reason why I also really reaffirmed my decision to join them, both the COO and the CRO, who have been deep in the process, basically, when I told them, they gave me congratulations verbally, and they were like, and I was like, on which? Like the job or the, and they're like, no, on the job. That doesn't change anything for us. So it's fantastic, I think, to see that the workplace does support it in the right environment. And I do think that like it tells you something about the values of the company and the team that you're joining, if it is an issue.
Related to this, I have a question for Carilu. I think that Any company that would hesitate to continue hiring someone when they found out they were pregnant, especially at an executive level, is so dumb because it takes 6 months or more to fill an executive role. I would like to ask you why that is, and also, just to point out, bring it full circle, why is it dumb? When you find someone who's really awesome and then you find out they're pregnant, you're like, just then come tomorrow. Just come immediately. Just start tomorrow. Because then at least you have a few months, and then you take a break, and then you come back. If it's going to take them 6 months to hire someone and try again, and it might suck the whole time, and they might never find someone, they might find themselves 9 months later with the same exact candidate, no longer interested. They missed out. Why does it take so long, though, to hire an executive? Like, what's the challenge?
It's hard to figure out the combination of three things together, and one of those is domain expertise. You know, marketers who know a whole bunch about their product or domain are much more successful in their domain than not. And you know, there's all sorts of men who might do female products at Procter & Gamble, but when you're in deep tech, the more you understand about the developer that you're marketing to or the security professional that you're selling to, the more resonant advertising or marketing that you can do. I think the second thing is experience. So generally, when people ask me about career advice, where they should take their next job, like, oh, I'm interviewing for this job, it's this VP at this company that does this thing, I always ask them, what's 2 jobs or 3 jobs away for you? Like, if you take this job, it prepares you better for the next job. So I've worked at small companies, big companies. Christine Wan, who was up here earlier talking about analyst relations, she and I worked together at a very early stage public company early on, and then we were acquired by a mid-sized company, ultimately Oracle. I ran awareness advertising for Oracle, and then joined Atlassian at 100 million. So big, small, medium, all in between. Companies really want you to have the experience where you already did the stage of growth they're going through. They want, you know, if I did 100 to 500 million at Atlassian, I am perfectly hireable for a high growth company that's done 100 to 500 because I know what it looks like. But if you take a job at a big company, you're not as useful to an early stage startup. Or if you're early stage startup serially, you don't have the patterns for a bigger stage company. So domain expertise, company size and growth, and then of course, your own skills. So as you move up in your career, you generally need more cross-training. Some marketers go all the way up in demand generation or all the way up in product marketing. But the best is to have some cross-training in different functions. And so it takes a really long time because there's fewer people that have domain expertise in the growth, you know, have already done the job you want them to do and have expertise in the main marketing challenges you have ahead of you right now. And so if you're thinking about changing jobs, you want to frame yourself around those 3 things. And sometimes they pick someone who doesn't have all 3 of them, but it takes a really long time to find that plus the fit.
Totally. And they pick someone who doesn't have all 3 of them, and I don't know, some percentage of the time, their tenure is 18 months or less.
Well, and so the whole reason I'm an advisor is because when I was at Atlassian, it was the biggest job I'd ever had. I'd run awareness advertising, I'd run demand generation, I'd run public relations, I'd run bits and pieces, but I'd never had a 100-person team. I'd never been responsible for a PLG engine. Oracle is not a PLG company. And so I felt like alone in the world. When you're the top marketer, there's not a marketer above you to give you advice. And so I do think lots of companies can't hire their dream candidate that's already done the run because someone who's gone 100 to 500 might want to go 400 to 1 billion. Or, you know, someone who's already been a VP doesn't want to take another VP job. Now they want a CMO job. And so being an advisor, I'm the person that I wished I'd had at my side to help me think about how I approach challenges and use different patterns.
Totally. Advisors can be so handy in that regard. Like, you don't actually have access to anyone who you feel safe necessarily asking those questions to. That's a lot of the reason why we bonded in the first place. But one such question is, you feel sometimes that the comms that you have to start doing, the communications that you have to start doing as an executive are like somewhat in a different language. They're just not what you are used to as an IC. So the first time I had to do a board deck, the CEO was like, we have a board meeting, it's in a month, like, which actually was a good amount of time because it took that many revisions to get to a place where we saw eye to eye on what should be presented to the board. And the reason was because I was approaching it from, a manager's level where I was giving that level of detail, but I did not understand what level of detail an exec has to communicate to the board. So twofold question, who is the board, like generally? And second question is, your rule of three. What's three things you should keep in mind when you're putting your board deck slides together?
You go first.
So I do a presentation to CMOs about boards because I was schizophrenic. I've worked for very different boards and had different processes and done some market research. I write a blog at carilu.com, and board is going to come up in the next month because I'm doing some work on it right now. But the board is generally, at earlier stage companies, founders, investors, and sometimes if it's pre-public, independent. If it's public, more likely there's independence. And their job is to have fiduciary responsibility that the company is using the invested money well to the benefit of the shareholders. So they're generally, the people on the board are CEOs, CFOs, and investors. There's generally not even that many operators. And so they actually don't care about marketing that much. They want to know, did you hit the number this quarter? Are you going to hit the number this year? If I give you more money, can you grow faster profitably? That's what they care about. So they don't really care about MQLs, and they don't care. They want, I was just talking to a CMO who said, generally they want 3 or 4 slides from us about the market context and competitive context, about, are we hitting the number for the quarter and the year efficiently? Some highlights and lowlights, what's working and not working. And then outside of that, they don't want anything unless it's going wrong. And then he said they want a proctology report, right? They're gonna look at everything, and you're in trouble because they're analysts, right? They're financial analysts. They're gonna, you have a typo on a conversion rate, and they're gonna zoom in on it and make you look embarrassed in front of folks. So really, it's about thinking as a marketer from their perspective. What's the least amount of information they need to know to help guide the business on some really big decisions? So too much detail makes you look junior. And then, sorry to go on too long, but the one last thing is, I think there's 3 phases of board deck preparation. And when I was a contributor, I felt so frustrated and disillusioned because we'd create all these slides and none of them would actually make it to the board. But now, there's these 3 phases. One is do a bunch of slides to figure out how we talk about our business in the marketing team. And then you present them to the CEO. And then you do a bunch of slides that are the CEO wants to see these slices and think about how he thinks about the business. And then at the very end, you cut all those 57 slides that you did down to 5 or 7. And that's what the board cares about. And instead of being disillusioned, it's part of the process of getting to the essence of the essence.
Yeah, that's said so well. And obviously, you've done this at the public level, so it's a whole different ballgame. I think there's something you said about you got to be the marketer and really think about your audience. And in many ways, the board, yes, it's technically your boss's boss, but really, it's just a customer. It's another customer that you really need to tell a really simplified story to. It's a really savvy customer, but first and foremost, I think the biggest difference that, and this is so obvious, but hopefully something that I didn't personally know until, probably the last 5 years of my career. You're a business person first. You are not a marketer in that room. You functionally own the marketing domain and maybe more. In some companies, marketing and people ops are together or whatever it may be. But it is all about what are you doing to drive the future of the business, and what's not working and what's working. It's that simple. So you have to really almost start with this top-down view, as if you are not in the weeds day to day, thinking about, our freaking Marketo instance isn't working again. Oh, that Salesforce integrity isn't there. No, they don't care, and they shouldn't care, and they shouldn't know about that. And so I think Carilu said it perfectly. The more information you give them about these kind of minutia and details and operations and reasons why, it actually comes across like your invitation to dig into your shit. And that's not what you should be doing. You should have a really tight narrative story the same way you would to an external customer about what's your value prop. You don't tell them about all the problems and issues with your product, right? When you're selling to the customer, you might caveat things, and you might just frame it in a certain way. So I definitely think it's top down, like think top down, start with outlines, simple questions, almost remove all the context and knowledge you have about the why to start and just get cut to the chase. They want to know the what to begin with. So it's definitely a different skill set, and less is more. And I totally agree about the process. I mean, that process is critical for the entire leadership team that is sitting in that room to go through together, ideally. And that's when sometimes things get a little hairy, right? Because there's sometimes discrepancies about how people want to frame what's going on. So I think there's an element of, if you are not the one in the room, you do have to place some trust in your leader that they may have reasons for why they're framing things differently. Then you're like, but that's not really why. This is really, trust that there's a larger context and reasons that you may not be aware of around previous conversations, about counterparts, about ecosystem things that you should have watched out for. Maybe you discovered a little too late, right? So I think there's an element of the framing that's super important.
And then I think the other thing that's really important, both for our careers and board decks, is marketing can have a seat at the table if we're the voice of the customer. The actual, like, if we're hitting our lead goal and we're just talking about leads, we're not that interesting to the future of the business. We're just an operational component.
Yeah.
But if we're talking about what we're seeing in SEO trends around how people are talking about the products, if we've done any customer market interviews, if we're really scouring win-loss reports, if we're keeping track of what competitors have announced this quarter, those are slides that marketing can bring into the boardroom and have board-level discussions. That otherwise, if it's just the numbers, sales and the CEO can report on it themselves.
And ready in the appendix as needed, yeah.
I have a very timely question for you, Elaine, but also for you, Carilu, because you advise so many leaders on this. Executives change roles, like go from one company to another. But if we look at it from internal to the company, there's oftentimes a team of people, a team of marketers, if you will, that are like, I have a new boss starting in a month, or they're looking for a new VP, they're looking for a new SVP. What do I do to make sure that my best foot is forward for when my new VP arrives, or my new SVP, or my new CMO, or whoever, so that, one, maybe you can dispel this myth, I make it past the first phase where, like, there's maybe some culling. What is that? Is that real? Why do we do this? Do we do this? And second, even if we don't do this, how do you put your best foot forward as a marketer who's about to receive a new leader?
Yeah, I don't think any of my team ended up being able to make it to this, but I'm sure I'll get back to them. So.
But if you're on our new team, listen really quickly.
Yeah, exactly. My old team is, some of them are here, but my new team, I do think, look, we have to be honest, people in this business, as you get more and more experience, you like to work with the people you know. And there's a reason why you choose them. It's because you have complementary skill sets. Maybe there's kind of a shared language. You understand people's like domain expertise. You know where they want to grow. You get to know each other personally, right? We spend all of our time in these jobs. I think that the culling, as you called it, which is a sad way to put it, is a natural outcome that isn't necessarily because you're like, I'm just taking my favorite people with me. It's because you're like, well, if I see a natural skill gap in this organization, or I'm thinking about where can we grow and accelerate over the course of the next 6 to 18 months, I'm looking at teams to say, what do we really need and what's gonna like work and who's gonna get to that next phase of growth. It's a natural, it sounds very cold and calculated, but you're projecting an asset and saying, what's the potential of that asset, right? Who happens to also be a human that you hopefully have a relationship with and build trust with over time. So I think that's like, I don't view it as a negative. I also think that it's helpful to be honest with your new boss's boss, whatever it may be, about what you think the issues are, what's been the challenges you've had in the past, what's been the things that have held the organization back, where do you see yourself fitting in, where do you see opportunities, right? Like they're making those same assessments, so show them that you've asked those same questions and share your perspective on it. And I think that goes a really long way, because in the beginning, every leader is doing a listening tour. They're doing observations and listening tour of like strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, threats, very simple. And the more you can help them along in that process, the more I think you make yourself invaluable in the longer term. And you can plant a little bit of a seed of what your interests and goals are. I think that's the other thing, is sharing who you are and what you want to see in the organization. Doesn't guarantee that it'll happen, but it's certainly better than if you don't tell people what your objectives are.
I think there's two critical things, and I advise people on this all the time, because I come in when there's a vacuum or changes. One, do your quarterly business review that you would have done at the last quarterly business review before the day that the new person starts. You want to have what happened last quarter, what happened the last year, outcomes driven, not activity driven. Their first week on the job, you want to walk into their office and be like, I've got mastery of my business, I've got dashboards, I've analyzed, I'm going to be your right-hand person to help you get accustomed to this. So many people are like, oh, someone new is starting, I hope they tell me what I should do. Yes. And then they're like, I say, you should get your QBR together right now, quarterly business review. And they're like, oh, well, I'm going to wait until they give me a template. Bullshit. It's your responsibility to be prepared the day they walk in the door to brief them like they're the president of the United States. Yeah. The second thing you have to do is be a yes man. And I don't mean a yes man where you like say yes to bullshit or horrible culture or go over your values, but they might say, hey, look, I need to reorganize the team and your job is going to change. You say, yeah. Let me figure out what I can do for the business to make this more successful. They say, hey, we have this really big problem and it's like in an area you're not an expert, but can you go help with that? Sure thing, I can. You like can't hold on to the past and say like, but we used to do it this way, or like I couldn't do it because we lost the budget, which is true, or like they fired all the people that did that, that's why it's a problem, which is true. Like you have to be here in the present moment with them because they're arriving with this optimism to go forward, and you have to be a fluid tool to help them with that. I've been acquired 7 times. I have survived and gotten better jobs at the next company every time.
Go to her company. Whatever she works for.
Wherever she's
That's
at.
the conclusion.
I mean, I got to run global awareness advertising for Oracle. I had done advertising before, but I was at a company they acquired, and I was like, hey, there's a job over there. And I told them, like, I know about product, I know about demand generation. I pitched some new role. Like, you've got to be proactive. This is your career to manage. If you sit there and wait for them to evaluate you and bring in their friends, it's on both of you.
I totally 100% agree.
And actually, the key underlying, you reminded me of this. There are 2 things that you're assessing, right, as a new leader. You're like, what house is the most on fire that is the most important for me to fix right now? And so if you have that QBR ready to go and you're like, I'm buttoned up, this house is not on fire, I'm on top of it, and you can trust me to handle it, you're going to be in a very good place when the culling happens, right? The second thing that you're asking yourself is like, okay, what other things in the organization are broken or on fire that I need to fix in order to support this thing? So there's like dependencies on that front. And you can't help that as an individual, but you can proactively help solve those things. If let's just for a second say, let's say the relationship with sales is a little, iffy.
Philosophically, never happens.
It never happens,
right.
Yeah.
But you, as the demand gen leader, are actually building tons of bridges because your last VP or CMO, maybe wasn't quite there in terms of building those bridges, and you've taken it upon yourself to be like, here are the 3 things I'm doing. I'm meeting regularly with the BDR person. I'm doing XYZ. We're changing this reporting structure. We're sharing resources. We're, offering this olive branch. Basically, you're saying, here's a problem that I'm solving for you, and also you don't need to worry about my area right now, which is all we're thinking about in the beginning. Because you can't be everywhere at once. People, I think, assume when you're having that conversation that you're like focused on just them and their, like, your area. And they're not. They're like, I have 400 decks I just got sent to me. Mm-hmm. Which of the 400 do I actually need to pay attention to? So your job is just to help them filter through that as much as possible and provide that confidence.
Yeah. If you're wondering if this is just like marketing execs, it's not. There's literally a book that is called The First 90 Days. It's a Harvard Business Press book. We have all read it. Have you read this book? Yes, I've read this book.
Yeah.
Every time I take a new job, I read this book as a little refresher. It's pretty boring, I'll be honest with you, but it's got some rules in there which are literally the framework for all new execs being like, well, if Harvard says this is what you're supposed to do in your first 90 days, this is what it is. I'm going to sum it up for you in one sentence. Get some quick wins, 90 days. If you have 90 days to get some quick wins, and the CEO and the leadership, the rest of the leadership team and the board is like looking at you and sizing you up, you have 90 days to get something
Really
right.
60, really 60.
There it is. It's just shrinking. And so imagine the pressure that this new exec is under. You want to be the person that walks into your first one-on-one and gives them something that makes them feel like, this is not a quick win. Do you want to be that person? The answer is no. And I think this is a really wonderful framework for how to not be that person. If you want this job, you like it, you want to stay, the way to approach a new leader is, how do you help them win? Be their bestie, help them win. Would you agree?
Yes, and I also have one cynicism. I mean, we work in startup land. I didn't ask how old you, what size companies you work for, but things ebb and flow. Like, you know, when I was younger, I'd get so attached to like my frustration with this new leader. I was at a company that brought in leadership to like clean out the company to resell it. And I didn't know it at the time. I didn't know that what it was. And I had a lot of conflict with that CMO because I was like, this isn't sustainable. It's like, I don't care. We're going to try to sell this shit in like 2 months, right? But she couldn't tell me that.
Yeah.
So I would just say like, both take your career really seriously, but like don't hold on too tight because what you dislike could like ebb and flow. And like sometimes they bring in some cronies that like are rejected by the org and go right back out.
Yep.
And if you're someone who like does great work and delivers and keeps good relationships, sometimes it's worth it to like stick it out in a bad time or at a bad company and get more opportunities in your career. And I was able, through different leaders that were difficult, able to cross-train. Like if you run demand gen and someone leaves in product marketing, raise your hand and go do some product marketing and it'll make you better as a demand gen person and give you the skills to be a more senior leader because you understand more parts of the business. So sometimes stick with it.
Yeah.
And if you really hate it, it's also not worth it.
Yeah, 100% not worth it. Your happiness, your day-to-day, like, is more worth it. But if you like it, like, then try to be the yes man. If you want to stay, try to be the yes man. Does anybody, like, raise your hand if you feel seen? Like, if this has happened to you. Thank you for being honest. Thank you. I feel like we all go through this, but we maybe don't want to say it. But it's so normal. It's like everybody's gonna go through this. If they haven't yet, it's just gonna happen. And the key to like success and growing your career, I really think, is resilience. Just like, yeah, it's all good. Like keep going on to the next one. So thank you so much, superstar executive ladies that I'm so proud to share a stage with. And we're gonna eat some snacks next. So thank you.
Thank you
Thanks for having us.